G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle as we analyse our recent 4-goal loss against the Essendon Footy Club at Marvel Stadium in a pretty high-scoring affair. Interesting game. There were both positive and negative aspects to it. I'll probably stop short of labelling it either a positive or a negative performance. I certainly don't think it's negative. I think there were, like I said, both positives and negative aspects to this game. The negatives were already things we knew about. And some of the positives were new, so that's at least something to take from it. But interesting game where you just felt like there was two competing brands. The things that we are good at and have served us well in games, like contested possession, our clearance game, we did well in this game, and I think our effort and intensity was there, bearing in mind we have a depleted midfield. That is really positive, and we'll get into specifics around that as well. On the other hand, Essendon clearly came with a plan that, they could score from the back half pretty easily against us, and their uncontested ball, their ability to control the footy, use it on the outside, and ultimately burn us through, end-to-end transition was unreal. I think they kicked 10 goals from the back half, I think somebody said in the live stream. There was a very clear strategy of how to beat us, and it worked effectively every single time. But interestingly, despite us getting so clearly worked out in a way that allowed them to score with ease, we still got kind of close to winning. And I do feel like the way we played today, is worthy of some praise. Like there was effort and there's intensity, and a lot of the senior players stood up, and a few new faces played probably their best performance of the year. And I do have the sense that had Essendon been poor at any point of that game, we might have, taken a hold of it. But fair play, I was actually pretty impressed by us, and I think it was a very professional sort of win. There were aspects of the game we were getting on top. They stayed composed. They really didn't make a lot of mistakes. Looking at the expected score, I think Essendon were pretty accurate and we were relatively inaccurate. I think we were probably like AFL average in terms of our accuracy, and Essendon, well, they were pretty clinical, both going inside 50 and once the ball was inside 50 in front of goal, they were pretty clinical. And so the expected margin was probably about 18 points, and that's probably right for the flow of this game. There's a few late goals that blew it out to 5 goals, and while we might have only been 3 goals worse, we were also never quite better than them. So it was one of those frustrating games where played against a pretty good team, undermanned, and we made a good account of ourselves, which is a refreshing change from the previous 3 weeks. So like I said, two competing brands going head to head, and Essendon just better for longer. I don't think we were particularly bad. There were lapses in this game where Essendon scored quickly. I felt like we responded quite well. That was kind of the pleasing thing with the mentality part of it, where the game threatened to get away from us and we'd score. But equally, every time we would really nudge Essendon, I think we got 4 points down late in the third, they would also equally have a response every time. So better team won on the day. So let's go through the stats to demonstrate some of the things we're talking about. 401 disposals to 292. That is enormous, that differential. And that, again, it's a negative, and it's not something we've learned. Like that has been a pretty consistent aspect of our season, is getting a lot less of the footy. Having said that, we won more inside 50s. To get 56 inside 50s is a very good effort, considering this is something we've been so deficient at in the past. And I do think that is built on the midfield doing their job. So we're a little bit less efficient with the ball in general, 78% to 73%. I think Essendon used the footy really well. Like I said, they burned us through end-to-end transition, and at times it doesn't look like there was pressure on. It was more like the players just weren't in the right position. Like they would just switch and get overlap, and leg speed was a factor. It's a little bit hard on TV to really tell how much of this is poor defensive running, or are we just not quite equipped? We don't have the leg speed to keep up with them. I'm not sure. But they used the ball a little bit better. They were a little bit more efficient inside 50. We did win the clearances, 44 to 35. I think this is impressive when you consider Reid and Kelly were not in the midfield, and we actually did have a fairly even contribution of clearance winners. It wasn't just that Yo pulled out a 15 clearance game like he's done before this season. We had a few new faces in there, which we will get to as well. But to win the clearances in general, I think that is actually a really positive sign. Contested ball was even. We got smashed in uncontested ball, minus 104. 104 possessions less on the outside than our opponent. That led to 126 marks to 77. 126 marks. That's ultimately where Essendon controlled the game. We did win the tackle count, but when you concede 104 less possessions, you'd want to be out tackling your opponent. But nonetheless, we are quite poor at this stat generally. And I feel like, our tackling standards in the game could have been better. It could have been better. without being absolutely horrific. We've seen worse, but it could have been better for sure. So let's talk about the centre bounces and the midfield mix. It was very interesting today. It was a very varied midfield rotation with like a lot of different players getting even amounts of looks at it. So Jinby had 78% time on ball, which is his second highest count for the year. For context, Duggan was in there 56% of the time, but Ryan's impact in there, Tyler Brockman's impact in there, and Elliot Yeo's impact, considering he was only 67% time on ball, for him to get 20 possessions, a goal, something like 7 clearances, that's still a pretty good game. It does feel like we're just holding Yeo back a little bit in terms of his on-ball time, but that makes sense. He's an impact player and obviously sort of getting towards the twilight of his career. So yeah, to highlight a few of those individuals in midfield who had an impact. So Liam Ryan, 19 possessions and 6 clearances. Bear in mind, that's 6 clearances from just 42% time on ball. That is a really outstanding effort for a guy who's probably never going to be able to play as a fully fledged midfielder. But we've clearly looked at the midfield mix we've had in this team. We've given Ryan a crack in there. He's had an impact. Same thing with Tyler Brockman. He had 14 possessions, 5 clearances from just 39% centre-bouts and attendances. His impact was very clear to see, and that is the first time we've seen Brockman at AFL level really have a positive impact, and I really did like what we got out of him. And it's like, obviously since the incident that happened, he's gone to the waffle, been able to play his style and play it effectively. He's come to the AFL level, hasn't missed a beat. So that is really pleasing, and probably this is what I'm talking about when I say there's new positives. It's Brockman coming in, impacting in the guts. It's Ryan also having a positive impact, and when we get Harley Reid back, when we get Tim Kelly back, it gives us different looks in our midfield, which is that is a positive that we'll take out of this game that wasn't necessarily clear before. Who else was good for us? Well, our tallbacks once again did the job. I think Tom Barrass was fantastic with some of his intercept marking, his contested marking. McGovern also led us for possessions, and this is again something we need to work through, is getting more guys through the midfield, like getting more hands on the footy, because when your key position defender is getting the most touches and leading the game for metres gains, that clearly shows a deficiency, as well as Gov is playing. Jamie Cripps had one of those games where he was really on. He did only kick 2 goals, 3, but he had 19 possessions and 4 clearances, and I don't think any of those were from the centre bounce, so he's obviously playing as that extra at stoppages and having an impact. Yeo's 13 tackles is worth noting as well, considering his less attendances at the centre bounce. To get 13 tackles, he was still very impactful. I think Duggan in the midfield did have a positive impact too. He doesn't have a lot of polish. He's a little bit more of a scrappy player, but I felt like he had a positive influence on us in the midfield. He only won the 3 clearances from 56% time at centre bounces, but I think there was something there. And, next week, maybe Reid comes in and maybe Duggan goes back again. That's probably the way to go, but I think, at least he had an impact. Jake Waterman was fantastic. Again, his work rate, as much as anything, I think he hit 3 goals, but, he was getting possessions on the halfback flank and the D50. He was just running, covering the whole ground, taking contested marks. We already know he's an absolute star. Chesser, I thought, was solid. There was one moment he gets the ball, kicks long, and you're like, oh, where's this going? And it goes to no one. Other than that, I think he's clearly working very hard. He had 14 possessions and a goal or something like that today, and does a lot of unrewarded running. So again, I think another positive step for him. I think Jinby also played well. I saw a negative comment about Jinby on Facebook from some page, and I'm not sure if I share it. He had 17 possessions, 5 tackles, 5 clearances, 76% efficiency. I thought he also had an impact. And also Ryan Marrick, obviously trialled in a different role. Looks like he's played more in the wing in this game. He had 14 possessions, unlucky to get subbed out, 388 metres gained. I think that is worth persevering with. If it means we find a spot for Marrick in his side to continue getting exposure at AFL level, I like it. So those are probably the positives. In terms of negative performances, I thought Alex Witherden probably had a day he'd like to get back. There was just a couple of coach killer moments, just bad turnovers that led to inside 50s, and I can't remember if they were goals, but probably one that notably didn't have a very good day. Bailey Williams as well, I think, also struggled. 44% centre bounce attendances. Flynn had the 56. His impact was way off, Bailey Williams. Certainly not impacting forward. And as a second ruck, I don't think he played particularly well. And I think whether it's this week or not, I'm not sure. But he's probably got to fight to keep his spot on the side at this current point in time. And I'm a Bailey Williams fan, but we just got to call it on what we see. And I think that would be fair to suggest. Jaden Hunt as well, just the 7 disposals. We know he's carrying an injury. And I also don't know if he had a run with role today. So if anyone knows, I might have missed that. But 7 possessions, there's been a clear drop off in output since the first month of the season. So again, probably not a player that I would drop. I think with this skill set, I think he's earned a little bit of job security at this current point in time. Also a lack of worthy replacements right now for that wing spot. But nonetheless, I thought I'd note that he didn't have a very big impact on this game. So yeah, to summarise, like I said, a game that was equal parts enjoyable and equal parts frustrating. Enjoyable in the sense that we did play pretty well, I would say. We'd like to keep that as our brand and our expectation consistently. And I would just say it was just a nice change from the previous 3 games we've played. I think Essendon are a pretty quality opposition. People still have their doubts around them, but they're set 3rd. Everyone's played the same amount of games now. They've probably had an easy run of fixtures lately. Like I said, I think it was a professional performance, and we were playing well enough that if Essendon had a bad quarter, and I mean a genuinely bad quarter, I don't think they were really poor for any lengthy stretch of this game. We might have got them, but they had an answer every time. And, we'll probably learn from that because they really did find a way to exploit us. And I don't know what the short-term solution is for us getting burned on transition like this. I don't know if there is a short-term solution. We played our brand fairly well, and we have some glaring weaknesses, and those were exploited. And we still, were a sniff late in that game. So we'll take something out of that. If we play that well against Hawthorn, plus a Harley Reid and potentially Tim Kelly, as good as Hawthorn are right now, coming off a bye, who knows, what their form's going to be like. Hopefully we get them on an off day. But, we're a chance. We're a chance. And like I said, the weaknesses and deficiencies we saw in this game were not things that we didn't know before. But some of the positives are new. Notably, Liam Ryan probably having his best game in the midfield, and possibly his best game for the year. He did a lot of good things. Also, Tyler Brockman's run-down tackle. That was fantastic. So that's new, and I like that. And Marek's game on the wing, that was new. Oscar Allen, I didn't even mention once in this video. He comes back into the side and, a little rusty, definitely. Flower bag shot at goal, dropped a sitter of a mark, but he worked his way into the game. He had at least eight marks, maybe more than that. And it's just good to have him back. So to have Allen and Waterman means that, if we're winning the midfield battle, we're going to be a chance most weeks. And, we probably did win the midfield battle from a clearance and stoppage point of view. On transition, we really struggle to have an answer. So stuff to work on. And it's probably more of a, what can we do in the trade and free agency space to try and help us with this clear deficiency? But overall, I don't have too much angst about this game. I think it was a step after 3 bad games. It was a step in the right direction. I think we looked a little bit fitter, a little bit less fatigued after the bye. And hopefully that will pay dividends over the course of the season. So for now, let me know in the comments what you guys thought. I enjoyed having everyone on the stream as well. That was good fun. A little bit sleep deprived. Naturally, I think I slept 3 hours before that game. But it was good fun, and I'm hoping to do the Hawthorn game next week. Either way, you'll get a preview from me sometime this week as well for the Hawks game. But let me know in the comments what you thought, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.